Originally, my next SRB2 video was going to be a review of Soap the Heads, a brand new member to the list of modded characters who can be boiled down to throw in every ability possible until we run out of buttons. I'm terrible at those sorts of characters though, as I lack the reflexes and muscle memory required to use the correct abilities at the right times whilst moving at the ridiculous speeds they all have to move at. But it was the fact that Soap broke my controller sensitivity for a while and would constantly spam bananas even when only moving forward that ultimately made me decide to give up on covering them. So I browsed the SRB2 forums for a different character and came across Sonc. I hope you can see why I felt I needed to look at him. But without further ado, let's get into it. Upon initially downloading Sonc and, looking at his character art, I assumed he'd be part of a very small cast of modded characters who, over choosing powerful or even just standard abilities, instead opt for having as few abilities as possible, or at least make the ones they do have as weak as possible. These are the Magikarp of the SRB2 world, characters actively designed to be as bad as possible, usually to be used in some sort of challenge run or just to be a joke. They're not that common though, because as it turns out, struggling to perform even basic platforming or developing any sort of speed is almost never fun, both for the players and the developer who has very little to do outside of delete lines of code or reduce stat numbers. And outside of his obviously handicapped physique, Sonc does sort of fit into this category due to his abysmal role. You can still use it to gain speed, although you don't have all that many options to use or maintain it, but it can no longer destroy enemies, which is kind of what it was made for. But the role does have one quirk that, upon recognizing it, made me think that Sonc might instead fit into a different category. Rolling into a wall at any speed will cause Sonc to bounce off of it, as if he's some sort of pinball. This caused me to think he might be one of the characters who are intentionally difficult to control due to some sort of movement effect, but who can be very powerful once you recognise how this effect works and use it to your advantage. If you can cast your mind back to when I looked at Zelly Tails, you'll recognise this archetype. His bouncy properties can be difficult to grapple with, but learning how to exploit them allows you to gain both massive height and speed very easily. And Sonc sort of fits this bill, both because of his role and his primary ability, the flounce. Clearly, the torso is important for performing thocs, because with its removal, Sonc has lost the ability to perform them, and can instead only flounder around. This takes the form of Sonic spreading his legs, in a purely innocent way, he's not that sort of hedgehog, and spinning around aimlessly, bouncing off any walls or floors he comes into contact with. This ability first seems pretty pointless, as using it on the ground only causes you to bounce very slightly, probably lower than a standard jump, but that's not where you're supposed to use it. It's best used as you jump from a high place or in tandem with his other ability, the wall jump, as the bounce height considers the distance you fall before using it. And with this knowledge in mind, and especially after learning to abuse some of its strange properties, this is actually really quite powerful. It bounces you up to more or less the same height as you drop from, meaning it can be really good for saving some missed jumps, but it can also be used in some areas for skipping huge level chunks. As an example, it can be used to great effect in Castle Eggman when used in tandem with these launching things, I don't know the name, as they give you all the height you need to really power up this ability, and especially when then entering flatter sections, you can keep this height gain going for quite some time. And then you factor in the wall jump. Using this ability can be hit or miss sometimes. I think it calculates gripping to a wall using the same code as Knuckles' climbing, as it doesn't grip to some walls, and it works a bit strangely when not jumping between walls directly facing each other, but when it does work properly, you can gain some massive height quite easily, which you then combo into more powerful flouncing. Alternatively, in areas with water, you can really exploit how the bizarre momentum increase when leaving water works, especially when the flounce act like Tails' swim whilst underwater for some unknown reason. I can't claim to know why this happens, but I can say that this makes the ability really powerful in some levels, even when performed in just very shallow waters. Or finally, you can use the flounce boost once per flounce to give yourself an instant jolt of upwards movement. I can't claim to know how this occurs, and Sonc doesn't seem to know either. Just be aware that this can be temperamental. Apparently it only works if you were running prior to flouncing, but ultimately I don't fully know why it works. The only real problem with Sonc's moveset from an objective viewpoint, some people might not like that you can't gain much speed or control the flounce all that much, but that's ultimately subjective, is that the wall jump, at least for me, didn't work all that well with the camera. Looking at GIFs on the mod download page, you can see that Sonc's wall jump should reposition the camera so you can see what's behind you, but you can also plainly see that in my footage, this does not happen. It means it can be really difficult to use the wall jump in most scenarios, as you have to very quickly reposition your camera to see where you're going, but that can cause troubles with actually aiming the ability. I thought it might be something to do with my camera controls, so I did check whether the same occurred whilst playing as Knuckles, but no, this is a Sonc only problem. I can't really think of a situation where you'd prefer having full control over your camera over it adjusting instantly to help you, but this seems like it could be fixed quickly by just looking for the camera control code in Knuckles' climb ability. Sonc has a perfect set of sprites. Whether you like it or not, Sonc is what peak physical shape looks like, a circle. But in all seriousness, I do genuinely think that these sprites are fairly clean. Obviously they are just the standard Sonic sprites with the torso surgically removed, but I think the blending of the legs to the head is done pretty well. This height reduction surgery also surprised me by actually affecting gameplay as well. I assumed it'd just be visual, but Sonc is actually short enough to get through crawl spaces by just walking straight through. This does have the unfortunate side effect of making him barely too short to reach the cast legman rope thingies, so you do just end up mashing jump until you luck out. A fun joke character, and I do appreciate the fact that the height difference isn't purely visual. If nothing else, I want to see this treatment applied to every other SRB2 character to see how they would turn out. Overall, I think Sonc is one of the better joke characters out there. Admittedly, the bar isn't set super high. While there are the great, really high effort ones like the Among Us Imposter, there are dozens of far lazier flat PNGs of Germ or whoever that have absolutely nothing to them. While the moveset doesn't exactly suit for the stars, hence the middling score, I do think the only thing it needs to feel completely polished is that wall jump camera change, but it shouldn't be too hard of a change to make. I assume not anyway. For all I know, I just asked the equivalent of entirely overhauling the ability. I'll give Sonc a 6, good but not great. I hope you enjoyed the video, and ciao.